Hi, folks. Before we get started, this is Elizabeth White, and I just wanted to come on and offer a little bit of a content warning right in the beginning because we promised that we would if we talked about anything that you might be concerned about for little ears. So, nothing crazy in this one, but we do talk about a little bit of the more in-depth parts of the crucifixion. Just briefly, we touch on that, but it's pretty jarring how horrific it was, and we talk about that a little. And there's also a brief mention of suicide because we discussed Judas. So, a couple things. It is not inappropriate, but it's a little heavy at parts. So, we just wanted to give you the option to listen to it in the right setting. And we hope that this is a positive experience for you overall. Enjoy. What's up?
Hi! How are you?
That's Elise Keller.
This is Elizabeth White.
And this is Theology.
Theology.
Elise, how was Easter?
It was so nice. It was really, really nice. It was really quiet. Not a lot of like busy back and forth this year, which is always my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
How was yours?
So it was really good. We so for okay, first week as an Anglican, first week with
I
the
was gonna
church.
say it was a big Easter for you.
So we did, I think we talked after Palm Sunday, and we missed Maundy Thursday
Yes.
because that Fiona had a play. So that was fine because there was foot washing and I was still a little bit iffy about that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we'll do that. That sounds really nice. I've done that in church before, but it was like in youth
Have
group.
you?
That felt like a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Friday night we did the Good Friday service, which was very somber, and I loved it. But Saturday night, the Great Easter Vigil, I had no idea what this was. We took our 4-year-old and our teens, which did not know there were like no other children there. Nobody takes kids to that. It's like
Oh,
2.5 hours of somber, loud, and it's late at night, and it was wonderful. I loved it. Um, Marky, the little guy, was in and out a little bit, but he still did fine. Dad took a turn, teens took a turn. I didn't take a turn,
yeah.
but we like did candles for the first half. So do you know what? Like, okay, I don't know how like universal this is. Is a Great Easter Vigil like a thing, like a universal thing in like liturgical?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think so because I always know it to be like Friday is like Stations of the Cross, and then Saturday nothing, and then
Okay,
Sunday morning.
okay. So the Easter Vigil, the idea is at
I
sunset.
would like this, by the way, so
You
tell
would
me.
love this. So you're going to be really into this. I do know that other Anglican churches do it because, okay, I had an idea right before we walked in. My teens were like, is this going to be sort of like last night? And like so through Lent, we've had Wednesday night prayer meeting, and that's Stations of the Cross. And
Right.
then they do Stations of the Cross at 5 to like 5:20. And then we had soup supper. So you could bring dinner and we all had like soup at the church together, which was very sweet. And then at 6 to 7, like a prayer service, which for us we did. It was basically the compline. I don't know how to say it. Um the evening prayers that we do in the Book of Common Prayer in the daily office, which is a whole thing I can get into. But do you know what all that is? Because it's all new to me. But again, I don't know how much crosses over with Catholic.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't. Maybe once you
Okay,
start
well,
talking about it, it'll sound familiar. Maybe I just don't know the names of it.
okay. Well, I will come back because that's not like what this is specifically about. But the kids, I was like, I don't know. It's probably about like that. So it's like about an hour. You do your prayers. You're in. You're out.
Sure.
There's no communion. Well, Good
Yeah.
Friday there was communion, but not celebrating the Eucharist. So it was pre consecrated
Yeah.
wine and host, which again, that's a new thing to me. Like,
New.
was my background that it wasn't consecrated; it was crackers and juice or whatever.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
could do whatever. Um, and so we still did, which was nice. And then there was like something before, like they brought in a big full size wooden cross,
Mhm.
and so for part of the prayer service on Good Friday, Father John and then Deacon Dolores. So we do have an ordained deacon.
Okay.
She's ordained as a deacon at that level. That's not her full time, not vocational. Like she has another job too, but um, they kneeled in front of that cross for a lot of it. We didn't all, but we all like walked past it after we did communion, and then it was neat because on the way out, they asked, Father John grabbed Christian, who's my eldest, who's 18, and who's like, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, like he's a big,
Yeah.
kid. He said, "Hey, do you want to can you carry that out for us?"
Yeah.
And so he picked it up, and I just kind of like, I know my son is like he's very introspective. And so I was like, I'm just going to let him have this like moment and just kind of, because I thought that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So
and
he
see where
comes
it goes.
out. I looked back a little bit. I didn't look back much though and watch him. And he told me afterwards, I said, "So what was that? Like you carried the cross?" He goes, "Yeah, at first I was like, this is too heavy. I can't carry this by myself." And then he was like, "Oh." And he's like,
Yeah.
and then I carried it like, and like on the way out. And I was just like, I'm going to like enjoy this weight. Like I'm going to like treasure this weight of the cross on me. And like, I was like, whew, like
Yeah.
what a beautiful thing that I just think, I don't know if Father John knew like of doing it, but what a beautiful thing for someone that age to see like a little
I was
bit.
gonna say it makes it even more impactful that he is like an 18-year-old kid.
He's a kid. He can relate. He's like, "Hey, I'm a young man with my life ahead of me." And
Yeah.
there's this like, so he like took that in, and I just thought that was really sweet and beautiful. That was an aside. That wasn't part of the service, but that was like the special thing we experienced. And then the Great Easter Vigil started an hour later than that. And so I didn't, so like the church is dark, the narthex is
Okay.
dark. We have
Okay.
this courtyard between our church building and the fellowship hall that's very pretty. There's like, it's really small, but there's like a fountain and a statue, and it's lots of beautiful plants, and it's really shady. So there's like huge shade plants.
Yeah.
It's very magical gardening, like ferns and camellias and
I love
everything.
that.
Yeah. So it was beautiful. So then they have us go out there, and there's like a fire pit in the middle burning. Like it was kind of cool. So we go out there, and they let us know it's going to be even darker when you come back in. The lights are going to be all the way off. So we go, and they're lighting the new, I don't even know how to say it, Pascal candle.
Uh-huh.
Pascal, is it Pascal? Am I saying that right? Okay.
Yeah.
See, like this is so new to me, which
Yeah.
now is like, it's like 5 feet long. It's like so
Yeah.
tall. So they lit it for
Yeah.
the first time of the year. And then Father John, like they like sanctified the fire. They like prayed over the fire, blessed the fire, whatever you call it. Then the candle, and then they marked the candle with like pin, like all this stuff was so new. And I have no idea what any of it means, but like I can get the symbolism, and I'm like tearing up just watching this process I don't even know. And
Yeah.
then like Deacon Dolores like carries the candle like outside to the street and then back into the narthex to go in the church, and we follow her. And there's like, she's not saying Christ is risen, but it's something like that. Like there's a call and response, and it's very loud. So we're like in the middle of our downtown, and that was neat. We walk in the building, and it's totally dark, and then we light candles. We all light candles from the Paschal candle, and so the service is in the dark, but we
Yeah.
just have these candles. It's still light
That's
outside,
beautiful.
like a little bit. The sun is setting, and we have stained glass windows on both sides of the church, but one faces the courtyard and one side faces the street. So the courtyard side was already dark. The street side was not, obviously, because there's some light coming in. And then we have a big one over the altar. We have this really big, not really big, but really a big, beautiful stained glass window that's up really high. But the city built a building literally 18 inches apart away from our church on the back.
Wow.
So I assume they had to do this. I'm still annoyed, and that was before my time. They have lights behind this beautiful window that would block. And so like that was off. So I mean, it's complete darkness. There's like, there's like chanting, singing, and I was so blown away by how ancient it sounded. Like it sounded like Middle Eastern
Yeah.
chanting that I've heard,
Yeah.
but it was English words, so that was really interesting. It was beautiful. And so we go through, read the Passion, read a bunch of like, there are a bunch of different readings, and then all of a sudden, like it's the Easter proclamation, and the lights come on, and the stained glass comes on, and he's shouting because you've removed the alleluias from it
Uh-huh.
since then. So apparently people knew to bring bells, and so he started saying alleluia, and like, so what it was is when the sun set, that's the third day. That's
Yeah.
the third day for on like the Jewish calendar. So that's what they're celebrating it when the sun set. That's when it all happened. So like,
Right.
and I was just like, we didn't know what was going on. It was like
Yeah.
stomping and shouting and yelling, and like they did this. He did the homily that is like the traditional vigil homily of the Eastern Orthodox Church of the Orthodox Church, and so
Wow.
he read that. And it's like they say like embittered, and you like yell, you're like embittered, and then he died, and you stomp, and you say he is risen, and you scream risen. Like it was like my very like mainline,
Yes.
quiet Protestant
Yes.
church. It was unbelievably overwhelming. Like just like it made it so real.
Yeah.
And my little guy, that was a lot for him. Like
Yeah.
the priest, they acknowledged we just didn't know what we were in for. Like
Right.
we just brought him, but he did really good. He was there for most, and he got it. He got the like celebration and the alleluias. So it was very long. Like I'm not kidding. It was 2 hours. I jokingly told our pastor yesterday, like I could have done another hour. I liked that so much, and he goes, "Oh, I left out a lot. Like it could have gone another hour if we did the whole thing."
Well, I believe that is how like an Eastern Orthodox uh, Easter vigil is. It's like
So I wonder if it's just an
hours.
Orthodox thing that my priest just likes or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's worth asking, I think,
Okay.
because I would I told my mom yesterday, like we went to regular Roman Catholic mass yesterday, and I watched my rock and roll church online. So
Okay.
I always say like I have to cover all my bases.
Yeah.
But I told my mom after. Now I believe that Orthodox, they're still in Easter. Their Easter is May 5th this year,
Okay.
so they're still in Lent.
So on a different time frame, but got it.
Right, which always interests me too because they follow what, the Julian calendar?
I am not going to comment on that because I have no idea.
Okay, yeah,
I don't know.
I know that they're following a different calendar, and some years it lines up and some years it doesn't. But I know they're
Okay.
still in Lent, and I think their Easter is
Yeah, I
in
know
May.
it's like a different calendar, but I don't know what I'm not.
Yeah, but I would be curious in ordinary time, or I don't even know if they call it ordinary time, but I would be curious to go. I have not been to an Orthodox mass in a very, very long time, and I'm curious now
Like,
since I don't know the word. I don't want to say respect it more, but I think I'm more just aware of maybe what's going on. I would like to go and see how that is.
okay, I'm really curious too. So there's an Eastern Orthodox church that I've been to a couple times just for funerals. Uh,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
It's like I worked with we have a big Assyrian community here,
Yeah.
and so it's funny because I have a friend I grew up with who's Assyrian and whose last name is Benjamin, and I'm like, they're straight up, they're like, oh no, we can trace our family all the way back to the tribe of Benjamin, like literally,
Wow.
like that's,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty cool. And in fact, it's funny because I grew up with these two gals, and one of their younger brothers is an Orthodox priest, just became a priest, in, an Orthodox one, and that's just been fun to watch because I saw him as a little boy, but now
Yeah.
it's like their family, they like every generation has it's really cool. Like they're
Yeah.
very, I don't know, I love that. So I have a deep respect and appreciation and
Same.
enjoyment. Like the most moving church service I've ever been to was a funeral at the Orthodox church.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
No.
didn't understand a lot of what was going on, and it
uh,
still was one of the most spiritually like moving.
Yes. I know, and I don't know what that is. It's almost like there really is maybe you're not speaking the same language, but there's like a third language that's there, and everyone can tap into that, and
Interesting.
you literally feel it, whenever, because I've been to Orthodox um funerals, even we went to go see a few times. They have like icons that come from different parts of the world, and they'll visit, like we have a really big Greek population, and we have a lot of Greek Orthodox churches, or we did. A lot of them are closing, but we went to go see a lot of these like icons that will show up, and it's just different. Like it's
Okay.
just so different.
I'm like curious. I might have to like do more visiting because I think that's really neat. And I'll talk to Father John about this. I'm curious, like what the
Yeah.
difference is. And the reason that I think that it might be like a thing that's also an Anglican thing, even though like he straight up referenced the Orthodox Church,
Cool.
is that I don't know. Do you know who Esau Macaulay is?
No.
He's a writer, and I I should actually look up some of the stuff he wrote because he's a brilliant writer, really beautiful, and he's an Anglican. I don't know if I don't think he's a priest because I think he's like a scholar, like a Bible scholar,
Okay.
theologian. I don't really know. I just know that I had followed him for a long time. When I became Anglican, I started to connect with he's Anglican. That's the stuff he's talking
Yeah.
about. Really interesting guy. It's really funny that his name is Esau. He tells a story about that too, like that in his writing. It's really interesting.
With a name like that, you almost have to follow.
He really had to. He really had to. But he said, I talked to our priest and he let us know that uh, our Great Easter Vigil will be over at 1:30 a.m. and it starts at 10 p.m. And so I was like, oh, is that long? But I read that as we're walking in. Ours started at 7 p.m. So it was fine. It was over before 9, which was fine. About 9. But I was, all of a sudden we're walking in, I'm going, is this going to be really, I don't know. Is there no childcare tonight? Because they don't expect you to bring kids at all, or or is there no childcare because they think kids should be in the service? I should have asked someone, but it was fine. I'm not sorry that I did.
That's how their Christmas vigils are as well. They have really long, like typically, or I shouldn't say typically, I'm just talking from experience. Like the people that I know that are Greek and that are Orthodox, they go to like midnight mass, but they don't get home, until like 3 a.m. or something.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, and that kind of makes sense. The interesting thing was the Easter Sunday service, the morning service was about like a regular length of services. Like I thought it was going to be longer, but I think it's because like the big Easter proclamation, the big long production of it, we did the night before when he was risen. So it was still,
I love that.
But it was really cool. I was like, I could go to church. I think I could do this every day. Who am I?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it so much. I was like, yes, let's go again. And we're going to be back like for 12 hours and I'm thrilled. What is that?
I want to get to that spot. I need more of that feeling.
Yeah, you just have to find the church that's right for you is what it is.
Yeah, I think maybe that is what it is. Last Sunday, Palm Sunday, did you do, I mean, I'm sure you did like the reading and the congregation was like the crowd. Like, did you do it?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And
we did that again on Good Friday too.
Did you? Yeah. And something about that, like something about the fact that like these were the same people who were so excited and cheering and they were welcoming him on a donkey were the same exact people who turned in no time. And for some reason, like this year it hit me in a different way because it just feels so typical of like our time. Like I could see that. I see people, like who feel very strongly one way and then it's like all of a sudden they can turn and you don't recognize them and they're screaming for, the complete opposite and you're like, wait, I thought we were doing the other thing. So I don't know. It just feels very relevant.
No, it does because it feels very modern in that, well, I don't know. I actually have a phenomenon that I want to discuss, but I forgot that we were recording a podcast right now, which is exactly what I was hoping happened. I just was thinking like, we're just sitting here having the kind of conversation we have. But I'll come back to it because it gave me another thought. That's another topic I was going to bring up. Right. But folks, this is a great opportunity for me to tell you what we intended to do today.
Yeah.
We had a different format in mind. Okay, so this is our fourth podcast week. So this is our fourth one we're putting. Wow, we're veterans now.
Yeah.
So we've tried out some like different formats, and one of the things that we've been talking about is just that we wanted to try a new format where it was just sort of us discussing the things that come up. And I don't think, not like to change formats, but to have this be an alternate format for us, because there are so many things that like we don't have a full hour of content about, but we want to touch base and catch up. So if this works, if this is still like compelling and interesting for people to hear us talk about whatever, then we'll keep doing it. But also we think that this is probably an approach we're going to take with some of our guests. So we wanted to sort of practice it on each other, and then I forgot we were recording a podcast.
And
I was just having fun.
Very much how our regular conversations happen all the time. It's like I pick up the phone and I'm like, I have a thought. Like I literally have a shower thought.
Wait, what is your I'm awake and I have opinions. That's my favorite. I think I wrote it down in my phone. I get sometimes
that's how I wake up every day with so many opinions.
Good morning. That's what it was. Good morning. I have opinions.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Elise is 3 hours ahead of me and the time zones. So I'm in California and she's in Ohio, and so we are like not on. Obviously, she's 3 hours ahead of me, so she'll get up and it's 3 a.m. for me.
It's the middle of the night for you,
but which I love. I wake up and I'm like, ooh, I got I love waking up to it. I have my morning coffee and Elise, like it's great. But but I get a lot of times there are like these really great openings because this is eminently quotable. And my favorite was, "Good morning, I have opinions," starting that way. And I was like, this is going to be a good day. I can already tell.
Yeah,
Uh,
I do have opinions. Or like the other day, I was literally in the shower,
literally in the shower.
and
Yep.
I picked up my phone and I was like, I'm having a shower thought and I have to talk through this right now. Like if I don't, because it's true. As soon as, well, I don't know what
Yeah.
that is. As soon as the water turns off, the thoughts are gone.
Yeah. No, for me too.
Yeah,
I know last night laying in bed, falling asleep, I was like, I have these really good thoughts. I want to talk about this tomorrow. I have no idea what they were. None. No
Speaking
idea.
of, this actually triggered something, which I don't know.
Good. Let's do it. That was enough explanation. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I want to talk about, since obviously we just celebrated Easter and we just went through Holy Week, I want to talk about Judas.
Ooh, okay.
I want to talk about Judas because
you bring the stirrers.
let me get my spoon. Let me get my wooden spoon.
Give it.
And I can't remember which. I don't think it was in our homily, but I think it was. We talked about it at. By the way, I don't know if I said this in one of the earlier episodes, but my rock and roll church is just a non-denominational church that I also frequent. So if you hear me say rock and roll church, and I only call it that because in comparison to a Catholic mass, it's very like rock and roll. I don't know. It's fun. Yeah. Okay. So
I feel like we can that's one that is pretty contextually obvious. We we know what church you mean. Like I love it. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were talking about the fact that Judas realized what he had done.
Okay.
And instead of turning towards God, he took matters into his own hands again and killed himself.
Yeah.
And I just want I was thinking about the idea that at some point Judas did come to realize that Jesus was the Christ. He was God. So he came to that realization, and could he have been forgiven? I think yes. I think yes, but he also was a pivotal point in the story. And if he would have repented, I think that would have been a great redemption story.
Yeah.
But we didn't get it, and it's a great model for.
Well, here's the thing: we don't know if he repented. It's not in the story. I mean, look, there's a lot of loaded conversation to be had about suicide. So
yeah.
I don't know about that, but there is a part of me. It's really funny. My husband mentioned this to me, that like in his online Christian community that he also has, that like there's been a lot of talk about Judas coming up in the last, and that there are people on there like these. Judas is definitely in hell. He's like one of them that's for sure in hell.
Yeah. Okay.
There's that mindset, or there's the like he tried to return the silver and couldn't, and he killed himself. So I get that that's self-reliant. He tried to fix it himself. That's not the right kind of repentance. But I just wonder what happened in his final moments, because there are moments of death between the decision and the occurrence in that type of death. And even then, we don't know what God has for us. And he was obviously truly sorry. He obviously realized his mistake. No, maybe he was just like, whoa, I realized he's God, so I'm in deep trouble. Maybe it was that kind of repentance.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask.
But that's the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is faith, and that's allowed. That is a valid kind of faith.
I agree.
So
I know.
I'm a feeling.
I know. And I read, and I feel like, and I don't know why, but it seems like I've just noticed Judas as a theme, like online, like on Instagram and whatever. A lot of pastors seem to be talking about him and his mindset, and ultimately then what he did, and so on and so forth. And one quote that stuck out to me, I should probably find it so that I'm not misquoting it, but it was, actually, I'm going to find it. We'll take an intermission.
Yeah.
Not a real one.
We got time. Find it.
Yeah.
Because that's, I want to hear, because this one is something that like I have gut feeling, I also have feelings about Pilate that I want to discuss when you're done with this, because that brought me right to my feelings about Pilate.
Okay, it says, this is from Stephen Lawson. I don't know who Stephen Lawson is, but it was just a quote from someone. It's from Creed's Confessions on Instagram, and it says, To repent is more than feeling sorry for your sin. Judas was sorry for betraying Christ and went straight to hell. So he obviously is of the opinion that it was a done deal. Judas went to hell. That's it. But to repent is more than feeling sorry for your sin. What is he getting at?
So it's the turning back.
Yeah.
It's the turning back towards Christ. And so I do get that. I would just say that we don't know that he, like,
Right.
from the information we have, yes.
Yes.
But is this silly that I want to like redeem? I want everybody to redeemed. I don't think it's silly. I don't, because I'm not saying, I don't know. Like if he really just turned his heart on, he felt like, oh, I messed up. Like, I don't know. But
Right.
if it was, I feel like I have hope that there's a moment
Right.
of true repentance in there, of the heart turning back to God, turning back to
Yeah.
Christ.
And
Because
then
he
I also have the idea that, like, which I think this was the initial stirring of the pot in the in our Bible study months ago, whenever there's a scripture that says Satan entered Judas. Judas was necessary. He was necessary in the plan.
Oh, okay, but so were a lot of, like, I know where you're going, because part of me thinks that too. Well, like, if they served the plan, then they were
Right.
good. But I think sometimes God just was like, I know this person's going to do this bad thing, so I'm
Exactly.
going to
Yeah.
use it to forward my thing, but it doesn't mean they're off the hook. That's the thing. It's a real big I don't know on Judas.
It is.
It's a real big I don't know.
It is.
I think, like, I can buy that, like, what he did, regardless of the fact that it was a net good, obviously, like the biggest net good of all time, that he also he contributed to murdering God. The Son of God, like, he's real bad. If he's in hell, I'm not saying, like, oh God, that's not fair, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
it's pretty fair.
yeah, it's fair. I'm
It's
good
fair.
with that.
I
Yeah.
just know that God doesn't always give us the punishment we deserve.
Right.
So it's not that I don't think that he deserves hell. I just know that God really likes us not to have to suffer that. So I don't know. I think just there's a chance he could have. I don't know. That's my take on it. What does your gut tell you? Does your gut, like, go one way or the other, or is your gut just wondering, like kind of mine is?
Yeah, I don't think I don't have a firm, like I said, like, I'm opinionated about a bunch of things, and this is just not one of them. Because I think he was used as a tool, and we did get the greatest gift ever, but what does it mean for him actually? I don't know.
He's still, like, yeah, like, he's still, so if someone is martyred, a Christian is martyred, which is the same thing. This is the story, but if I'm rephrasing it to put it in our modern setting, if someone was martyred because someone murdered them, the martyr, ultimately, this is good. Like, they go to heaven, they are a saint, like, but the person still murdered, they
Right.
still did wrong and sinned. So it's like, oh, like, there's just because there was a good outcome doesn't mean that still wasn't bad. But also, what we don't know if the person repents. Like, that's between them and God. So I love the uncertainty about this.
Yeah.
But I think the opinion that this is significant and this is, like, interesting and worth, like, thinking about.
It is. It's definitely worth considering, because
Yeah,
there's
I think that's what your opinion is like, we should be thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because
Definitely.
also, how different are we from Judas?
Yes. Well, and that's one of the things that I was listening to another sermon, and it was an Easter service. I don't remember what church it was, but the pastor was talking about crucifixion and describing it. It was first invented by the Persians, and then the Romans perfected it. And he went through the stages of crucifixion, and I had never heard it in that kind of detail, like the actual, like, historical what crucifixion was. And this was, I mean, he probably went 10 minutes into a dissertation about, like, from the flogging to the actual carrying. And then there were so many elements of crucifixion that I've never heard of before, and it's so gruesome and so grotesque. I can't, like, to hear it in that kind of detail. And then he ended it by saying the people chose to put God on a cross. That's what they chose that for their God. And that, like, literally out loud, I was like, whoa. Like I was like, that, like, it hits you in the face, because when you hear all of these details about, and I mean, it was like, there
It's
were
horrific.
things, it's horrific. And
You
there
can
are
explain.
things.
I'm going to pause you for a second to say you can explain if you want. I've already decided that I'm going to go back and record a brief content warning for the beginning because we've discussed suicide and we're discussing this.
Yeah, that's true.
This is a good topic, but parents, I want them to have the option of
Yeah, that's true.
deciding.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's listening to this around kids, but I'd like people to have the option. So
No, no,
don't
no.
worry.
And I'm not.
Say what you
Yeah,
need
I'm
to
not going to go
say.
into
I'm going to
detail.
do a little content warning.
That's good. But there's so many elements of the crucifixion that they purposely made even more horrible, and like the Romans made even more horrible.
I don't want to gratuitously go into that, but I am curious. I don't know. Can you give me like an example?
Of oh yeah,
Like
I
some of the
mean
things, because I know they nailed him to the cross, but like they did things to make it. I know they did things that made it harder and worse, but I don't really know. Do you recall some of those, or it's okay if not? We can look it up for the notes.
yeah. So and actually, I will. Maybe I'll send you the sermon, and like you could throw that in the show notes.
That'd be
Maybe
awesome. Yeah.
like it because he references everything. I mean, I'm sure I can look it up too, but like there are and like you said, we don't have to like you could pause this. You don't have to put this in, but they people who were being crucified would have to. I mean, you probably know this part. They would have to like lift themselves up to actually take a breath because you end up asphyxiating, and in order to hasten their death, they would break their own like arms and legs, and the Romans put like a tiny step so that they couldn't do that, and they would nail their pelvises to the cross as well so that they couldn't break any of their own joints to like quicken the death. It's just horrific. Like it's so horrific to hear about it, and then to end it with this is what the people chose for their God. It smacks you in the face.
And I think sometimes it should. Like this one, we can.
Same.
I've never seen the Passion of the Christ.
Same.
That one. I've
I
seen enough of the scenes, and like I don't care. I don't the whatever the problematicness of the. I don't care. That movie, I think, serves a really huge purpose, and I do not think the film itself is problematic.
Yeah.
Except that it shows something that is so offensive to our souls that it should be. So I see where that's coming from. I don't think I could handle it just visually, but I've been thinking about it a lot the last couple days. Like I almost want to watch it in part, like the behind my hands, like
I know.
like watch it, but kind of like come in and out of the room, so I don't have to fully engage. I can't. There are going to be parts I can't handle.
Yeah.
Maybe during Holy Week another time. Like I'm ready to just be in the exalting about Christ being risen part, but I do think it's good to like sink into that.
I think so too.
Sink into that suffering, and that's what last week was like.
Yeah.
I think the Maundy Thursday service, I had read a little bit about it. I believe they stripped the altar. I wasn't at that one, but there was nothing on the altar. There were no flowers, no candle holders, no altar cloths, but like literally everything that's normally up there was gone. So very somber.
Yep.
Contemplative and serious, and then to like that juxtaposition with like the joy and the light and the flowers and the altar cloths back. I think there's like a purpose. I mean, I guess that's what all of Lent also is, but that's new for it to be a penitent season. That's all new for me. Like I've never really thought of it like that. So yeah, that's really interesting. I'm interested in maybe watching that at some point. So I will briefly just, and then we can shift gears, but I'll just briefly say that I feel like Pilate, which by the way, in all our readings out loud, I wanted to say Pilates every time, like Pilates, because it smelled the same. I'm like, stop it. It's so terrible. I mean, I've heard that name my whole life. It's not like I don't know that, but I was just reading it and it was coming up. So he like didn't want to do it. Like,
I know.
Jesus, let me not do this. Like, hey, people, like, I don't need to do this. Like, you guys, I don't have any means on which, like, I don't have the right to crucify him. This is on you. I don't know. Maybe he is still culpable because he didn't say no. He didn't stop it.
Right.
But also, he did not want to do it. He actually tried to stop it repeatedly.
Yeah.
He offered to release him.
Yeah.
And even Jesus didn't speak for his own. So I mean, Pilate still could have been like, but absolutely not. I'm the boss, and I'm not going to allow this. But like, he would have had a war on his hands, like this huge rebellion. I don't know. He's probably the person, the bad guy, the villain, of the
Yeah,
Bible that I empathize with the most.
I agree. No, I agree. Like I always, whenever we're reading it, the Passion, I'm like,
Who doesn't want to do
I
this?
don't hate him.
I know. He's like, you guys, what's wrong with you? I think so. So what's interesting, and I think my pastor said this at some point. I don't know if he was talking about Pilate, but he was talking about like folks' hearts were good, but like not good enough to stand up before it. So like Joseph of Arimathea, I don't, am I saying that right?
Yeah, I
I don't,
think so.
I've never heard this pronounced out loud. I don't think so. That I have, but I'm not sure. But he went and like asked for Christ's body after the fact to dress it and treat it properly. But he
Yeah,
was a powerful person. You know, he didn't before try to stop it. So the point was that there were folks who like the point that my pastor made. There were folks who loved him, but like didn't lean all the way into it. Didn't do the like disobedience that would have put their own lives at risk
right.
alongside him.
Yeah,
And now I don't know that I feel that they did anything wrong by doing that, because when Peter tried to defend Christ with a sword, he was like, no, don't do that. Like, this is the cup
yeah,
that God has for me. So I don't know that, I don't think he wanted people to stop him. So I'm not like angry at them, but it's an interesting point. There are people who could have stopped him. They were not the most evil, but there was not one who had the power to do anything about it who acted.
yeah. And you can't help but kind of put yourself like, how would I react in that situation?
Yeah, and I mean, would you have, if it meant certainly you will be up on a cross next to him?
Right.
If you knew he was like, now we know he's Christ, we would, right? But they knew, but did they know yet?
They
Had they
knew,
seen
but
him rise?
I know, and that actually
They
gives me
still they
so much.
still didn't believe it when he died. They're like, ah, he's dead now, so I guess it's over.
Exactly. That's my whenever we're reading and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like I don't know what they're talking about. What does any of this mean? There's so many interpretations. This could mean this, whatever. I always take comfort in knowing that even the dudes that followed him around were like, what are you talking about?
They're like, and he died, so I guess our big thing is over. This big wonderful crusade is over.
Yeah,
Let's go back to fishing.
let's
Like,
go back to fishing. Yeah, so it does bring you some sort of comfort. You're like, okay, I'm reading this 2,000 years later, and it's still like all of these references to things that I'm not familiar with and customs that I don't know and whatever. They're confusing to me, but it's okay because they were confused.
even that. So the other part that I think is really interesting that comes up for me when I read this is the Zebedee boys, right? So two of the we're like 15.
I
These
know.
apostles were teenage. They were
They were
children.
babies. I know.
And so like necessarily they're the ones who could pick up and leave with,
Yeah.
without everything, and that could follow him in this way, and that could go on and live for a long time after he was gone. But they were children.
They were children.
And so I'm so proud of them. Like these are my forefathers, the fathers of my faith. But like at the time they were younger than my eldest kid, right? Like
Exactly.
some of them, but the thing is also I can see my son in the face of that. Like he's exactly the right personality and
Yeah.
age that he
Yeah.
like I'm taking off and following him. Like I see why it worked out that way culturally at the time. And
Yeah.
I think that's to me, but also like for their like mistakes and their selfish motives and their okay, I get it. Like they're teenage boys.
Oh,
And it like gives me a little bit more grace for like why did they do that? All
yes,
the time.
but you can't help but, like I said, like think of yourself at 15. That's what you
I don't
like.
wanna.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not what I would be doing.
Right. Right. So
I'd be acting cool.
yeah, like I mean I'm really glad that it wasn't me, like, because that would
Yeah.
not have gone as well. God, he knew who he was picking, and I mean, obviously, maybe I would have been improved by his presence, but it's young. It just gives me like just a lot of compassion and grace,
Yes.
and it makes some of the things I really want to next. I knew this before we did the Old Testament last time. Actually, I don't know if I did. I think I learned it when we were doing the Old Testament last time, is when I really put together how young they were. So I wasn't like holding it in my mind. I really think when we do the New Testament again this year, I want to like hold that in my mind, like picture these children,
They
picture them
were
and
children.
see how it really changes my interpretation of how Christ speaks to them,
Yeah.
how they speak to others, and the authority that they speak with at that age. Like it's really beautiful, and I just think it's more context that I want to explore.
Yeah, like lean into. Because when you have that understanding, it makes it easier for you, the reader,
Yeah, to
So
relate,
far
yeah, or to put it into perspective and
yes,
create emotional context, because how you relate to a 15-year-old is different than how you relate to a 30-year-old. So
exactly.
like we're relating to them, they're writing this when they're older, but they're writing it about themselves as young men, and I
Right.
love that.
Yeah.
So I have another topic to bring up, since we're just doing that, some random ones.
Yes.
It is so silly, and I don't know if I told you about this thing I'm doing, but oh no, I told you in part. So I think I told you I read the Frank Peretti book, This Present Darkness, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm not sure what this is, like 90s. That might have been a little bit earlier. And do you know what this series is?
No.
Okay, there are these two series that came out when I was like a teenager. I'm not sure when, like the Left Behind series, which you probably know about,
Yeah.
which is like Tim LaHaye and someone Jenkins, right?
Though I've never read the series.
So no, I haven't seen the movie. I haven't read it, but it has deeply influenced my. That was like the uh, main theology. It was a movement that was going on at the time when
Yep.
I was like in the youth group culture, and my dad is my dad just reads everything. He's like a really
Yeah.
really fast reader, so he had all the Frank Peretti books and all the Left Behind books, so I knew about them. And the Frank Peretti's like spiritual warfare end times, I don't know, I read the first one, and it's very earnest,
Okay.
and it's a little silly, like the the writing is beautiful, very moving, like story. The spiritual warfare is, it's really good. I just didn't find the writing that compelling for me.
Okay.
um I don't know, have you read like Dan Brown? Or
Yes.
okay, and then like who's the those other so Dan Brown, he writes religious topics, so it's, I don't mean that part, believe it or not,
I was
but his like
obsessed. I was
rhythm.
obsessed with the Da Vinci Code. Like
Okay,
obsessed.
of course you. Oh
Of
my
course.
gosh, total other topic. We have to talk about that too.
Yeah, we do.
So like that's a whole, we could talk a whole episode about that, but maybe
Yes.
talk about that in this too a little bit. So anyway, that one isn't really good. I'll give you an example. Overall, it was good. Overall, the spiritual warfare, it illustrated some spiritual warfare principles to
Okay.
me in a way that's really useful. So it's sort of the topic that we talk about a lot, which is that like the universe is like, our world is populated by supernatural things that we don't see, and they are interacting with us.
Yes.
That gave me a better visualization than I've had. So
Okay.
I've heard it explained in a
Cool.
way that's really meaningful, and that really drove it home for me. And I will put
Yeah.
this in the notes, but I also wrote, I've talked to you about this endlessly. I wrote a little review on it on the Fake Librarian, but it's Death to Deconstruction by Josh.
Yes. I know. I need to read that.
You do. I have, but I will put this in the notes. So if you didn't get that, I'll put it there. So he explains it really well, but
Okay.
that book illustrates it really well. But
Yeah.
also, it's like, guess where the center of all the demonic and bad things is, at the university, because that's where they're getting these like bad ideas. And then like when you go in and you can see it, the place that was the most infested with demons, and this is just so innocent, was the arcade, the video game arcade. And so like you went in there and it was like the demon of complacency and rebellion, and so it was like the worst, the pit of iniquity, the den of iniquity in this book. It was like at the video arcade, which
Yeah.
I find earnest and sweet, and I do not mean to mock it. Like,
Right.
this was written in a different time. The purpose of this was absolutely crystal clear and beautiful. But I read it out of curiosity.
Right.
This shaped, there's such like a part of the specific group of like non-denominational evangelicals that I grew up in that was, like I've told you, much less toxic than a lot of the experiences other people had growing up.
Yeah.
Like I grew up, I think that it was the protective influence of my parents having slightly different background and just having more discernment. They
Right.
had the discernment to say like, some of that's weird, but some of it's not, And so I, like, for me, it was overall a very, like, I have this very
Good
real faith.
experience.
Like, I think it's good.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to mock it. I just want to be really clear. I didn't think it was very good, like good writing. I will
Yeah.
probably read the rest, but I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm like ready to read another one of those. And I read really fast. I started Left Behind. Way better.
Is it good?
It's so good. Like it's kind of silly. And that is, so I'm not a pre-trib like rapture person. So
Yeah.
I know you're not either. Briefly, I will explain this because my reasoning is that I don't think when the Bible verse says, you know, there are two people threshing in the field and one goes away, there are two people and one is swept away. To me, it's very clear that the people being swept away are the non-believers, not the believers. And so I feel like that means that's when Jesus returns to us. So like there's a different timeline. I think that all the same things occur. I think that our timeline might be off. Like
Yeah.
I do not think, but I also don't think that matters for the point of this book, because what is getting me about this book, and again, it's still kind of earnest and like, so it's really funny. I live in sort of like right in the middle of California, not too far from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So the main character, one of the main character's daughters, is a college student at Stanford, which is in Palo Alto.
Yeah.
And I relate. My brother went to Stanford for medical school, so like we're close to there. He's a
Yep.
PA, not a doc. If he listens, he's always like, "I'm just be careful. That sounds like I'm a doctor. I'm a PA." I'm like, okay, but PAs go to medical school, so it's true. I'm not trying to like lie. It's just that's the name of the school that he went to. So Zach, I promise, if you listen to this, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to oversell you. My brother
But
is
just
the
take
same name as your husband.
compliment.
So my brother is Zach, who we should have on because he's brilliant. He actually wrote some Christian fiction that I have forgotten to tell you about. That's really good that we should talk about, but that's another thing. So, but like that's the den of iniquity. Like all her crazy ideas again for that. So, but actually, I live there, and talking specifically about Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, you're not wrong at all.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it seems very true.
Question. So the very first chapter of the book, the rapture happens.
Yeah.
Right. So you have people left that are not Christians,
Okay.
but a lot of them that thought they were.
Okay.
So for some people, that's really, just to like briefly get you up to speed. For some people, that's like, well, this obviously wasn't the rapture, because I would have gone if it was.
Yeah.
But others are like, yeah. So I see enough. Like I can see all the pictures. I know the scripture. I realize now that my faith just wasn't. I knew I was faking it. I thought that might still be enough, but now I get it. So like you have those people that come to Christ right in the beginning. What I think is so powerful about it, even though the story itself does not line up necessarily doctrine, it, first of all, it's not supposed to. Like it's fiction. But it's instructive. But it has this, I'm relating to it so hard. And here's why I think that is. This was my late night realization, by the way, so it came back to me, that's why I wrote it up.
Good.
These folks in this book have had this realization. They have suddenly realized it's real. This thing they knew that it's real, and they're experiencing it in a way that like they can't turn away from it. They can't deny it. The folks who wrote this absolutely have had that experience. And I know because I've been a believer my whole life, but it became real to me in the last year.
Yeah.
Like in a way that is so profound that like I can't contain it. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm very aware that I don't have to understand it, but it became so real. So the way their worldviews shifted when it became real, that is so real.
It is. It's very relatable. That's very relatable.
Like it's very short. Like these are quick reads because they're like the James Patterson and Dan Brown model of like short, fast chapters.
Patterson, that's who I was. Whenever you said, I was trying to.
And that's what I was trying to. I couldn't think of it either, but it came to me after, and Left Behind less so than the Frank Peretti books, which I'm going to keep working. I've heard that they get better, so I'm going to go back to those. But I'm going to finish Left Behind first because I just finished the first book yesterday. Yeah. I read it over Easter. I listened to it and read it off and on. So good. Like surprisingly good. And again, it's not like the best writing. It's not a classic literature writing. Right. But it's actually way better too than the other one. And
how many books in the series? There's like a bunch. I was gonna say, I know there's like a bunch. I know that was like a big thing in like Protestant circles. I think I would like it too.
Because you get these, so it's really interesting. At first, some people are convinced right off the bat. They're like, yes, clearly all the children were taken, all the babies were taken, all like the best people. It's really funny because some of the people think it's just the weirdos who got taken or just the naive. But they didn't realize the Christ thing. They were like, well, I just know everybody I know that was left was a little bit odd, was a little bit weird. They were extra innocent and earnest. I just thought that was like funny. They kind of disproved that. They showed that they were very strong, intelligent people. So they like overcome that misconception, but you can tell that people interpret it all different ways. But then folks, so they start telling people, and so some people are very deceived, but right off the bat, the Antichrist comes on the scene and the two witnesses.
Oh, so they have like the whole cast of characters.
Everything. So that's what's so cool is like, I don't know how those prophecies are going to be fulfilled, but
Right.
it's such a clever way they did this. So my favorite part is that the two witnesses, it's not irreverent, but it sounds funny. They don't know
Yeah.
where they came from, and they only know their names because they're calling each other, and they're Eli and Moises. And they're like calling each other, it's Elijah and Moses, like, and they're like the two witnesses. It's really cool. Like, people can't get close to them because they just drop dead. If people try to
Yeah.
attack them, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to. The men drop dead.
Yeah.
So it's literally like in the timeline. It's really cool. So that's kind of where it ended. People at the time, this first book, the Antichrist is on the scene and all that. So I'm absolutely going to keep reading and keep talking about it on here. But that part, I think I like latched on to what is so relatable and what is still so beneficial about those books if we're not looking to them as guidance for the end times, but also not one thing that I think they might be wrong about is harmful. Not one thing that I like, you know, like it's fine if we don't know when it's going to happen, and either we get taken here. Like, this is a secondary, totally a secondary issue, but the preparation of
because we would have no idea how that looked. Like, we don't know what that really looks like.
It's their imagination. What he did is what we're always trying to get people to do, or what I think we haven't always. This is our fourth one, but what I've been even before that. Like, think with your imagination about how it could possibly play out in a way that makes sense and that would feel real and realistic. Just imagine that it could. This is one way it could play out.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's like a powerful teaching. I'm like, I just am really taken aback that I feel very like I've been kind of snobby about this. And I didn't read it to mock it. I want to be clear. I read it to understand something that birthed a movement.
Yeah,
and
I know, because I know now that it was like it was a really big deal. I had never heard of these books, never heard of the movie or anything, and then I watched The Leftovers, that was on HBO, and it was a rapture without. I mean, there was nothing Christian about the show, but that's like what it was. Like, it was a rapture, and like they didn't know where their loved ones went, and like they disappeared in an instant. And I watched that like years ago, and then recently I started hearing about like the Leftover series, and I was like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, oh, this is a thing that like kids my age would have read or been encouraged to read. So maybe I'll read it.
Like, it's pretty fun. So, and they're fast.
Yeah.
They're fast reads. Like, it's so like, I don't know. It's silly but fun. All right. We have time still for a bit about Dan Brown. Please. I've read all his books too. I would like you to know. I have, but I'll tell you, I want you to start and then I'll tell you my context.
Okay, so two things real fast. Going back to like the end times, whatever. I always think about like prophecy and this and that. Like, think about right now, literally just what we're doing right at this very moment. Like, we are across the country talking to each other in real time on a black box. Like, imagine how they would describe that. And it's like, that's why I can't get hung up on like end times things, because it's like they're describing things that we don't really know what they mean, because
they didn't have language for, and we may not have language for.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, we might not have like whatever technology they're really talking about. Like, we might not know what that is, because if they were standing here, if someone from 2,000 years ago was standing here in this room, like in a house with walls, and like heat comes from this weird thing right here, and like I have a tiny furry creature that I live with, and it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, these are just concepts that they're so, like, I have a red light right here. They'd be like, what is this red light? What does that mean?
Why do you have a red light? Why do you have a red light?
Okay, I'm a big fan of red light therapy. I have psoriasis, and I am convinced it has helped my psoriasis.
All right. I'm very interested in red light therapy stuff, so we'll have to talk about that. We don't have to talk about that now, but I am very curious. That's what I figured.
They will sponsor us, and we can get coupon codes for my red light.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, sponsor us. Sponsor us. We're open to that particular sponsor. We want red lights.
Yeah.
So, okay, I agree with you. I think, and I think we always assume that everything that they talk about is technology, and I don't know if I always think that, but I think it's always possible that it could be. I'm also totally open to the idea of an actual dragon.
Same.
The angel slaying an actual dragon. I would love that. That'd be very cool.
1,000%. Oh, and I think this is something, just to go on, just as an aside, I did tell you this. I was talking to my mom about the tiny village that my grandparents were from,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
their church, their Catholic church, was transformed into a Catholic church, and it was called Church of St. George the Dragon Slayer. And my mom was like, you know, we used to like actually believe in dragons, and now apparently like it's all fake. But like he was a real guy who slayed a dragon. I was like, Mom, he was a real guy who really did slay a dragon, probably, and we've just sanitized it. And I don't, who knows? But
Right. I mean, could have been what's the story? It's in France. There's a woman who slayed a who like a saint woman who also slayed a dragon.
wait,
Do you
I'm
know
looking
what I'm
it up.
talking about? Okay, and there's the whole story, and I think I know who it is, but I don't want to say because I might be like really crazy. But I and it's a really big deal. Like in France, regionally, there's a whole story and account of it, and I mean, I'm not saying that it was a dragon the way we think of dragons, but it was like I think this really could have happened. It could have been a demon.
Saint Martha.
A yeah. Okay. That's so. Oh, that's right. Okay. So, and that's the Martha is I believe that the story is that that's the Martha from like of Mary and Martha from the Bible that they traveled as
Ooh.
missionaries to that place that is now later became France. I could be wrong about all of this, but I'm going to look this up for. Oh, you have it there, so we can look into it. But that's right, Martha slayed a dragon. Like how?
Yeah,
So
in
I mean, she killed
Terrasson.
something. It was
It was a
causing
monster of some type, something
monster, right?
big,
It could be demonic. It could have been a who knows? It could have been a Gila monster that made its way up onto like from somewhere that you know
right?
is still those are horrifying monsters that are very dangerous. Like it could have been imagine if you didn't know those existed and what was there. Like that'd be very scary and realistic. But like also, I don't know. We believe in a virgin birth.
I know, that's a thing.
Like
Like
why
we
do we not
believe
believe that? But nothing else ever happens.
nothing else
Nothing
weird
else.
has ever
Yeah,
happened. Like
no, that's
all of
it.
that is just like it's just
Like that
story,
one thing. And like we have a Christ who died and rose from the dead.
right?
Like I just think
But everything else,
but like where do we
fake
set
it.
this limit? And we have become nothing ever happens Christians.
Exactly. And then you do end up becoming very, to use a term, like very lukewarm. You become very like, well, it could just all be metaphor. It could just be this. It could just be that. You know what? It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you have to believe everything was like literal and like this, you know what I mean? Like I think
Right.
there definitely is allegory and there are things to take into consideration there, but it is a slippery slope when you're like, well, that's not really then how that's not how they meant it, or
Right.
that's not really
Right.
what they were
You can do that
describing.
with anything. And I want to be clear for anybody that's pedantic and might pick up the slippery slope is a logical fallacy. That is true. However, we are not talking about an issue of logic. We are not talking about a law where you make a law to prevent something because you're afraid it will have a slippery slope into this. We are talking about believers who choose to do this and we can choose to avoid a slippery slope. So I just want to be clear that like we're not like engaging in a law. We shouldn't make a law based on a slippery slope, and I agree with that. But
Yeah.
decisions for your own life and for the way you pursue things, and also this is just discussion. We're not saying you shouldn't do it. We're just saying it is a thing that happens. You can start to justify and rationalize and intellectualize the Bible to death, and that's what we're not trying to do. While we are trying to like just have like discussion and discourse, the point here is not to intellectualize. So I just know that so for me that's something that my less kind self might like jumps on that term, and please don't do it, don't come at us because we used it exactly appropriately, so sorry. um but I love that, and I think that's very true, and I think that it's good to have some things are allegorical, but like this whole like it's all or nothing, black or white. How about we just like let's be honest, we don't know.
Yeah.
But we do know there is a supernatural reality. If you're a believer, if you're not, then like by all means you do you. But if
Yeah.
you're a believer, you've accepted that there is a spiritual supernatural reality. I don't think it's different from science. I think it's just science we don't understand yet.
Agreed.
Okay, who was the guy? I say this all the time. Who was the guy who said any significantly technologically advanced, what was it? Any
I know where you're going with this.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indiscernible from magic. So that's not the full thing, but that's the idea, is that there comes a point where if you don't understand how it works, it's magic, but it still has a scientific principle. It's just advanced enough technology. So that's also true of the things of the spirit. They're still real in a scientific way. They are still created. They can be explained potentially through those means, just not yet, and not by us. So
exactly. It was Arthur C. Clarke.
Thank you.
What's the actual quote? I'm like Jamie on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Look, can you read the quote there?
Yeah, it's when he formulated his famous 3 laws, of which the third law is the best known and most widely cited. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, I was close.
You were really close, yeah.
So that comes into play all the time for I think people use that as a way to try to disprove faith, and I'm like, yeah, you're doing the opposite there. Like, that one to me means just that we don't get it yet doesn't mean that there's nothing to get.
Yes, there's this whole topic about which maybe we'll add it to the list of things. But
we need more topics. We're like moving through them.
This whole topic of like alchemy in the Bible and of the Bible, and it does appear as, like magic, but it's not. It's just science and chemistry and things that they didn't understand yet.
Right. No, I love that. And there's also some weird stuff like casting lots in the Bible, in the Old Testament, which is like, but for me, it's just God told him to do it. He tells us not to. That's fine.
So it is what it is.
I don't care. Again, it doesn't. He's not saying it doesn't work. It's not that it's not possible.
Exactly.
But I only want to do that when God is the one actively controlling the things with which I am casting lots or whatever. Not anything else, because someone else might answer too. Like, and that now when we don't have permission. So yeah, there was stuff going on that was just scientific. There was stuff that was happened that was supernatural. We really want to define and categorize, and that's human. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a great discussion, as long as it stays in the realm of discussion, which is interesting about Dan Brown. So I'm going to give you some context for why I think this is a good topic. My husband had read all of them when we met. He really liked Dan Brown.
Yeah.
And also knew a lot about like religious history. He knew the Gnostic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize. So he's not a lifelong believer, but he knows more about like the Gnostic Gospels and those than I did. And not all of it was true. And he got curious from those books. Sure. So like, let me be very clear that I do not think that Dan Brown's books are historical fiction or fiction based on anything real or anything that's happened within, like, I do not. Some of it is heretical. If he was saying it was scripture, it would be heretical, but I don't think he's saying it's true. I think it's just a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Very interesting books. I read them out of curiosity. Mm-hmm. I was like, I just want to know what they're about, because they were this Da Vinci Code, when that came out, it was
so popular.
That was really, and it was really hard on Christians. You had Christians who read it and it hurt their faith. You had Christians who were like, don't you dare read that. It's super dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm not of the mind that it's dangerous to read it when you have discernment, but I read it definitely as a mature Christian, as a mature believer later in life, and they're really entertaining. They're real fast and they move.
They're really good, and the movies are really good.
And they actually tell a lot of stuff that you do learn stuff about art and art history and like the history of Italy and the Bible. There's like some cool stuff. So when did you read these? Is this like a long time ago? Where does this fit into your journey? Like,
so I was weirdly obsessed with Leonardo da Vinci. Like whatever school project we had, if I had to write a biography on someone, if I had to do something for whatever, like I would pick either some invention that he had. He was brilliant. Like he was absolutely brilliant. And he came up with sketches of things that we didn't have any ideas for, like the scissors. Like he was like the first person to like think about the scissors. Yeah. And
I know that.
Yeah. And so anyway, I loved him. I was like really obsessed with him. And then there's so much like lore and whatever around like the Mona Lisa and a lot of his paintings. And also he was like a Gnostic. He allegedly had, like ties to hidden knowledge and this and that. So of course, like I was so interested. But then whenever the Da Vinci Code came out and there was like this whole fantastical story around it, like I just fell headfirst into it. And I really didn't like, that's whenever I'm like, oh, there was hidden gospels, and we're not getting the full truth, and like we're not
Oh, it
being
did.
told.
That's the thing. It did send people astray that were.
Oh,
It
for
was
sure.
a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, and then come to find out, and again, this is oral tradition, but the Freemasons also are of the belief that Jesus, I don't want to say this for like with 100% certainty, was either not crucified, but he regardless escaped and married Mary Magdalene, and they have a lineage. And that's a true belief allegedly by the Freemasons.
Right.
But that lore, that story came from a hidden gospel of Mary Magdalene. It was found in like 300 or 400 AD. And the problem then happened like way later, I think in the 90s or 2000s, where a Harvard professor was like, "Oh no, this is true. Like this, like we can confirm that this gospel like is actually, it was written, it was written in like 40 AD, so there's credence to it, whatever." And then so you hear all of that, and then it never comes forward that really was just a Gnostic gospel. It was like a one-off written either fan fiction or
intentional deception from somebody, or
exactly, like you don't know. And then that's not big news. So you do have all of these people who are like, oh crap, we don't like, but then who was Jesus? And like, what did he really get married? Is there a lineage? Does he have like kids, or did he have kids and they have grandkids and great grandkids, and who are these people and this and that? And it just leads you down like this rabbit hole. And it wasn't until really recently, that I found out that, oh, those gospels are not, they're real. I mean, they really exist. They're written down.
They exist. Somebody wrote them, but they're not.
But they're not actual scripture. They're not confirmed.
It's not like the canon, the scriptures in the Bible that we have. There are bunches, there are a lot of copies of them, so they can compare and contrast. They could say like, what is it? Like they're consistent, repeated.
Yes.
Like lots and lots of examples of people, witnesses of the same thing.
Yes.
Delivered it in a way that is actually, eyewitness accounts, and you can actually believe it because they're different enough that you can tell they didn't collude on them. They have like the little slight changes in how they remembered it, or their perspective, because the one person saw something that someone else didn't see. Like to me, that's more evidence that it's true than anything.
Yes.
And there's no corroborating evidence that I believe that will move the needle for me on those Gnostic Gospels.
There's a again, I know I mentioned him in like one of our maybe the first or second episode, but he's a New Testament scholar. I'm losing my voice. He's a New Testament scholar. His name is Wesley Hupp. And
I know you like him.
I love him. He does such a good breakdown, and he does such good infographics, like quick information to get out to people to understand where the gospel started.
Will you send me that? I can link him.
I will, because he's so helpful. Like I think, like he was such a huge part of my coming to terms with the fact that like, oh, this is real. Like this is not it's so frustrating now hearing like, oh, Jesus was either fictional, because it's even people who are completely secular, complete atheists alike, just historians, they all believe that he was a real person. It's like the problem lies with whether you believe he was God or not.
Right.
But so when people make that ignorant statement like, oh, he was a fictional character, and you believe in a fictional book, it doesn't even make it, like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's very frustrating now to hear. But like even 5 years ago, I've been like, oh yeah, I guess like, it's
possible that you're right. Yeah. So a good book to read for folks who want to look for some of like the historical evidence. The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel is like never gonna go. That book is not gonna go out of style. That one is really good. It's not a new book. It is a really useful book for this sort of thing.
Yep.
I feel like I could use a refresher just to have the data. Like for me, it's written on my heart.
Yeah.
Like I know it's real because I learned that all at some point, but there's not room for all the detail in my brain.
And that's I know.
Actually, that's the wrong side. My heart's not on this side because it's a flip screen, but it's over here. It's in my heart. It's not all written in my mind.
Yes. And I wish it was. I wish I could pull out a Rolodex but I do remember I just pulled up Blurry Creatures. I love that podcast. You love that podcast too. They posted a post today, and it says, Proximate historical sources for Jesus abound, 40. By way of comparison, we have 8 for Caesar Augustus. No one doubts that Augustus was real, was really who people said he was. And that's so true. Like, how do we trust those 8 accounts versus however many? And it's just because our history books told us that Caesar was real and Jesus was maybe somebody. Or maybe not.
Yeah, it's the sources, it's the cultural, I want to say, conditioning to look at this as a religious issue. So I think, yes, the divinity of Christ is a religious issue. The historicity of Christ is not debatable.
Exactly. I was actually thinking about that today during. We're still in the Old Testament, and we're in Judges, and it's very boring.
I have a Judges statement, though. I have something to say about that.
And anyway, all of these names are being thrown at you, and I don't know if you've seen that reel where it's like whenever you come across a hard name in a book, and it's like, and blah, 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 went to the store today, and she met up with, and that's how I'm reading. I'm like, I can't pronounce these names, but I was thinking about it today. I'm like, it's funny because we have all of these obscure historical figures that we learn about, and I'm saying they play a very small portion, but we learn their names, and it's interesting. If these people are real, it's funny that we don't have any more information about them, and maybe it was there somewhere, and do you know what I mean? There's
Old Testament, there is a lot of corroboration for a lot of the Old Testament. The Judges, there are absolutely alternate texts that talk about that historically. These were the leaders of the nations at the time.
Yes.
So they leave out some of the parts of the story, but the story, there's so much corroboration for, even in other religious texts.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wish in a secular worldview, we focused on that sort of history. How much more would we know and appreciate and understand if we focused on these people? But just because they're in a religious text, it's oh, well.
Even when there is corroboration and outside of religious text, right? We have nothing. We have no eyewitnesses left from any of this stuff.
Right.
And including Caesar, including these names that we know historically. So, man, we could keep going. This is for a future episode where we want to talk about, we know we have 2. It's really funny because they're beginning and end stories. We know we have 2 things that we want to talk about in amongst our topics that are specifically eschatology. So the theology of the end times and different understandings of it, because let's be clear, it's not clear. There are things that are very clear about it. We know how it ends. We just, there is a lot of how we don't know, because it was written as a vision, as a prophecy. So some of it's symbolic. That's intentional. I think we all agree that most of that stuff means something. I mean, maybe it's all very literal. Maybe there's literal wax. Maybe the seals are literally physical seals. Maybe it's all literal. But if it is, we still can't visualize it. So it's kind of distant. But also the creation narrative. No, I'm not saying creation myth. I don't think it's a myth. I think it's a narrative that we have lots of interpretations of. Yep. And I think we should absolutely dive more into that. But for that purpose, I'm also reading at the same time a book called Sapiens. Have you heard of that? Okay.
Yes.
So it's the history of humankind. And so and we're talking about on a evolutionary history level of humans, like Neanderthals versus, so there's a lot of stuff in there that I think there's a creation narrative that I have had posed to me that is somehow both literal and very true to the Bible, but also true to history. It doesn't quite hit all the points for me, but it is a compelling argument that we may be thinking about this wrong, basically. We may be being too either or, black and white about this. What if it is literal and God is truly literally speaking, but also it's just in a language we don't speak fluently, sort of, in a way to express it. But I'm wanting to read the history of humankind from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm just a little bit into it, and all of a sudden it almost felt like I was reading a supplement to the Old Testament. Like that's how
Ooh,
interesting history of the world like aligns to it. So I'm actually also looking into some of the like history of that region of the world of that time that we know from what we know from scientific records. There because their written records don't go back a ton further
right.
than the Bible, obviously. So I will see where that leads us. That's going to
Yeah.
be an interesting one to dig into. But so I'm reading, that's my nonfiction right now. So I have a nonfiction, a Christian nonfiction that I'm reading, which I just finished one. So I haven't started a new one yet. Maybe we got to pick one to read next. And then my fiction, which is left behind. So we'll see where that leads because we're
Yeah.
going to dig into that topic. But I would love to do a full conversation on the Gnostic Gospels as well
Yeah.
because
Same.
I'd have to research the heck out of that one. But I want to say the one thing about Judges, and this is, we're about the same time we've been on these, so we're good. We still have a couple minutes to wrap it up. One of the things that has led so many people to the Gnostic Gospels, there's a book called, like, I think the book is called The Gospel of Mary, but it's about the, it's about that. And it's written by a female Harvard professor. It's fairly recent. She
Yep.
states all these things as facts about the Gnostic Gospels, which she also says she's not a believer, so it's really confusing
Yes.
to read that because she's making theological assumptions,
That's
not
who,
just
yeah,
historical
that's who
ones.
I was talking about.
Okay,
Yeah. And it was
horrible.
really recent.
Okay, I mean, I read it because one of my girlfriends who's a serious believer also was seriously hurt by that, and
Yeah.
I mentioned it to my priest to say, like, this comes up all the time, and he's like, I have not experienced the same thing. I don't have people coming to me with these questions about the Gnostic Gospels all the time. What's the difference? Like, I wonder why. And I said, well, one, it's the people that I'm talking to. It's just like my circle.
Right.
Uh, but two, it's women. And I actually asked, my friend articulated this so well. She said, I just read it and thought, I've always wondered, where are the women? And here, here's where they are. That answers that question. So what a terrible deception to draw women into because we aren't seen because of the cultural context that the Bible was
Yeah.
written in, not because of God's heart. And
Yeah.
whenever it shows up, like it just moves me. So here is a woman in the Bible. The judges in 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 the book of Judges,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
judges were not legal judges. They didn't
Right.
preside over court, right?
Right.
They were like kings, and they led the military. But God was the ruler of those nations. So because they were theocratic, is that the right word? Theocracies, yeah.
Yeah.
But apparently Deborah she was more of a legal judge than most were.
Yeah. I was
But
gonna say he's an attorney or an attorney.
yeah,
A judge.
but
Yeah.
she was the judge. She was the essentially the king for a period under God. She was the ruler.
Yeah.
She took them to fight again, like out to war. And Barak, her
Hmm.
person that she made the general,
Yep.
he was like, you got to come with us though. She's like, if I come with you, they're gonna
I'm
say
gonna get all the
a
credit.
woman's gonna get all the credit. And then there's another woman that shows up in the story. And that's when Sisera
Yeah.
runs, the leader, and he runs to the tent of his ally. And Jael, I don't know if I'm saying her name right. She drives. That's the famous work of art where she drives the
Yes.
peg through his skull. Like
Yeah.
she's the woman who took down the leader of these guys, the bad guys that they were
Yes.
after. So the women in this story that actually do the judges were like Gideon was okay so far as I've gotten this round.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of really great judges. Like they did
Yeah.
okay. They stood up for when they had peace during the time they had those judges because God ordained it. But like they didn't follow all the directions except Deborah. And
Yeah.
she was wise and she was faithful and she warned him like, hey, a lady's gonna get the credit. Like she was realistic about it. Like the women are there, and that is so countercultural to have a woman be in power. It could only have possibly happened because in a world that was led by our God, about the
Right.
living God.
Yeah.
Because this was a culture that didn't value women, that didn't care about women, in a world where we were property, little but only under God could a woman have that kind of like influence and power and respect. And so just because we don't hear about it all the time, because they wouldn't have written it down, not just because it was likely men who wrote down most of the Bible, but also women wouldn't have been believed. It wasn't,
Exactly.
if they had said a woman said it, people for most of history would have been like, well then what you're saying is
That's
bull.
not true. Well, and that was actually one of the fallacies in the Gospel of, I don't know what Gnostic Gospel it is, but it's talking about the crucifixion. And the one major detail that was changed was they had two soldiers who discovered that Jesus's tomb was empty, and then there's like this really, like in the text, there's this really like a huge crucifix like comes out of the cave, and it's like 1,000 feet tall or something. It's some grand like dream like whatever. But that's one of the reasons they knew that this was not like the other text, was because in the official actual scripture canon, women were the first ones there, and that was countercultural. But
And
that
women,
is actually
this
that's
is a
how it
note to
happened.
something else. Women were the first ones to teach the gospel, to preach the
Exactly.
gospel of Jesus Christ, that he was risen. It was women. That is an aside, but I just would like to make that very clear.
Yeah. And so that's
Before Paul was even on the scene.
yeah, exactly. And also I've read that women funded their mission. Like they were the ones who gave money and so
And
that they
Paul
can
talks about
continue
that
to
all the
have it.
time. He says, thanks to my friends, women who supported us financially. Thanks to
Yeah.
my dear friend and apostle,
Yes.
who's a
I
woman.
know. And I hate that
All right, this is a topic we can talk about like tomorrow. Can we do one
it
about
is.
women? Can we do a series about women?
I think so. I
Start with
think we
one. Let's start
probably
with one
we
about
probably
women.
have enough to go off of, or at least I can dig stuff up.
Okay, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk about women because that's a good one. And you're right. That I didn't realize that was one of the points. And like, yeah, don't take that from us. Don't
Yeah,
don't take that
exactly.
from
But
us.
that was part of
And
the
don't
culture.
tell me that you're looking
They changed
out
it.
for women if you're removing them from the story.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. All right, this is good.
Okay,
Oh, this
I
is
love it.
actually timing because my mom's calling and I have to talk to her. So this ended perfectly.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I was going to say, real fast, I'll do an announcement. Do you want to, if
Yeah,
you're done,
go
if
ahead.
you need to take that, you can even hop off. And I'm just going to record a little bit of announcement for the end because I want to talk about the future of the blog a little bit, of the blog.
Perfect. Go ahead because I mean you know why I have to talk to her. So
Yes, I do. I do. You got
all
it. You
right.
got to take this. All right. Bye, honey. Love you.
Bye. Love you more.
Okay. So Elise has like genuine lots of stuff going on right now. They're just, when they need her, they need her. So we're going to just address this really fast. Although I suddenly got really awkward because I'm not talking to anybody, but I'm talking to you. For the next couple of podcasts, they're going to still be posted to my Elizabeth's page, which is the Fake Library on Substack. We also have a new publication on Substack, so that's like the name of your newsletter. And so you can be an individual, like you can be an individual that just reads it. You can be an individual that has a publication, or two people can collaborate on a publication. So I've been putting these on the Fake Library because I wasn't sure, we weren't really sure if we were going to keep going. But we are starting to move this over to our Theologyology page. And so I'm going to post a couple more to the Fake Library. And so if you find us there, I will continue. You'll still be able to find us. I'll still link it. But after a couple more, we're going to be moved completely over to the Theologyology page. However, on YouTube, we are findable as Theologyology, and it's spelled just like it sounds, but you can read it in the card, in the beginning or end if you're on YouTube, and all over if you're on Substack. And pretty soon after we do that, we're going to maybe make this available on other platforms. I'm not sure. We don't really have big intentions of promoting and such, but if people are interested in hearing us talk, we sure enjoy it. And like today, I think we both forgot frequently that we were recording a podcast. So I hope this was still interesting. It's just something we were trying out. But also kind of with the hopes of seeing if any of these topics stuck and inspired us and if they were interesting to you. One of the coolest pieces of feedback that we've gotten is that folks are going, I'm like writing, I keep wanting to chime in, or I have a thought and I want to join the conversation, which is exactly what we were hoping for. So we are going to be inviting people on the next several that we're going to be recording, in fact, are going to be with guests because we just want to have conversation with them. It's not necessarily folks that we're like interviewing. There are friends that we've been engaging with in this conversation yeah, that made sense. But we've been engaging with in this whole topic and conversation, and it's just to have another voice to be on and have conversation with, and to like inspire us and push us and ask different questions. So we'll have that to look forward to, and I think this format might be an occasional one that we will do. let us know if you have any other topics or if you have questions this brought up. We're also really looking for a way to have some live conversations so people can just chime in and join us. I'm not quite sure how to do that yet, but we're going to work on it. And if you have an idea for how we could facilitate that, that might be really neat. Yeah, we've got some exciting ones coming up. Tomorrow, we are actually having Caroline Dooner on, who is our friend who introduced us and through her Bible study. So we're going to be recording with her. I have a couple other people I know we're going to be recording with, but I don't have their days confirmed yet, so I'm not going to completely announce that until I have something to confirm, but I should be able to do that by tomorrow. So thank you so much for listening. We appreciate that you care about this enough to kind of stick around. Our friends, this is all it's for. This is who it's for. We love you. We love learning about Jesus with you. And I don't know, we're here. So if you have something to ask us to pray for, or a topic you want us to tackle, or a topic you want to come on and talk to us about, let me know. You can mention it in the comments. You can DM me on Substack, and we'll be around.